everybody! In today's video I have an extreme 4D little monster who is biting the nail. So you've got the nail, if you look at it this way, the little monster is like clamped down on it and then it's hanging down. So you can like swing it and stuff. It is so cute. There's a little bit of like a looped separation on his neck so that he's in two separate pieces, the head and the body, so they can wiggle and jiggle. And then I have a little bite mark taken out of the side of it. I think it's so cute. I hope you guys like it as much as I do. Don't forget to check out Helen's design. Hers is going to be linked in the description box below, and I'll see you next time. Bye! So I'm going to begin with an overlay of Cover Pink acrylic. Much like I have said a gazillion times before, I like to do Cover Pink in a background just so that it's basically an invisible background and that it doesn't distract away from the nail art at all. So I've got the first bead and then here's the second bead going over it. Beautiful. And now I'm going to file the nail into shape with my E-file, starting out with a coarse bit to remove any bulk. And then I'm going to go to a nail form backing and I'm going to lay down a bead of very, very bright green acrylic. And then I'm going to lay down a second one. So the first one is for the head and the first one is for the body of my monster. So after I've got those beads and they're just setting down and they're starting to solidify, I'm going to begin tucking in the sides from side to side. For the head, I want a nice circle. And for the body, I'm going to sculpt it into kind of a teardrop shape. So it's got a little bit more of a point on the neck side and then a little bit more round wideness at the butt side. So we've got that nice little body shape, but it's a monster. So you guys can have fun with it and make whatever shapes you want. Then while that acrylic is still a little bit pliable, I'm going to take a dotting tool and create a whole bunch of little indents in it, little small indents, and then I'm going to actually brush in a secondary color. And for me, I'm going to use a very bright orange, but either like an orange or a purple or even white, black, or a different green would be nice for that. So just brush in that secondary color and that will kind of gather in those little indents you made with the dotting tool. And then when you file these a little bit, you'll get this really cool, very nicely textured polka dot pattern. So now I'm going to glue a little looped wire onto the back of my skull or the back of the head, I guess, of my little monster. So just hold that little piece of wire in there until it sets up a bit. It takes just a second for that glue to really start to grab. And then after you have that, you can use that as a handle to sculpt the rest of the monster's face. And I missed this on recording it because my camera told me that it was going to die and I ignored it. And we want to sculpt the monster with his mouth open. But I'm going to carefully file the orange acrylic so that, or the orange part of this little monster head, so that it leaves those little polka dot patterns. So you want to file off the excess orange acrylic, and it's really awkward because this little head is so small and you try not to file the wire too much. So it's just a little bit of an awkward thing, but it doesn't take too much effort to get those polka dots revealed. Then get another piece of that looped wire hooked in to the first one and then glue that end onto the body. So just place that on there and then hold that in place. It doesn't take too long for that glue, but then after that's done, then same thing, you have a handle that you can now work on the body with. So you're going to lay more of that green acrylic on for the body, just like you did for the head. So a second or third bead on there. It's really awkward to do, and I really recommend wearing a pair of gloves so you don't accidentally get any acrylic overexposure on your skin when you're holding on to this and working on it. But then file his body just like you did the head to reveal those little polka dots. So just kind of keep on working it. Like I said, super awkward just with how wiggly this whole thing is and how small it is. Getting it filed. And don't use an E-file because you'll end up filing off too much. But then back to my nail form backing, I'm going to be sculpting a whole bunch of little other pieces that are required for this. So starting out with the same green that I was using for the head and the body, I'm going to sculpt arms and legs of my monster. So depending on the size of your monster, I mean, there's so many different options for arms and legs. You could, like Helen's has those really long, crazy arms that are just unbelievably cute, and that would be an option. You can do something a little bit more realistic like mine. I don't know why I'm saying realistic. That's not proportional. That's probably the word. Not realistic. Nothing about this cute little monster is realistic. Sometimes the wrong words just fall right out of my mouth. But you can do something a little bit more proportional. You can add claws to your monster's arms or your hands and feet of your monster like I did. So I just did a little bit of white acrylic like this and add some claws. You could give him fingers and hands. You could give him like a hook. I mean, really, options endless. Have fun with it. Just play around. And if you just Google cute monster cartoon or cute monster clip art, you're going to find so much inspiration. It's really endless. There's just so many cute little ideas if you're feeling a little bit like you've got artist block and you don't know what to do for it. Or obviously you can just do it like mine too. That's totally cool with me. But then so I've got my arms and my legs done. I'm going to need to sculpt some horns because I want my monster to have horns. So those horns are just those two little white shapes that are so hard to see on the video because it's a white nail form backing with white acrylic, but they're just little like swooping pointy shapes. Classic horn, nothing too crazy there. I am also going to sculpt a tail for my monster in just a moment with that same green acrylic. So that's off to the other side, and I'm just going to set down a couple small beads of that green and pull it into a tapered, same shape as the horns actually, pretty much. But then with purple, I'm going to be sculpting a whole bunch of triangles for the vertical scales on my little monster. So I think kind of like dinosaur, cartoon dinosaur look with those vertical scales. So just triangle after triangle. Don't stress if they're the same size or anything, or even the same shape. I mean, obviously a triangle is a triangle, but there's variations within the triangles. So whatever you want to do, you just sculpt a whole bunch of them. Try to keep them similarly sized, but if you have some that are smaller and some that are larger, that actually works to your advantage, because as you're placing them down the spine of your monster, you can place the smaller ones towards the tip of the tail, and they kind of taper down, and it looks really nice to have a couple different varied sizes. So if you end up with some that are a little smaller or a little bigger, just roll with it and use it to your advantage. So sculpt as many, as you want to. I did not use anywhere near as many as I sculpted, but I wanted to have some options when I was working on it. And plus, it's always my idea that I want to sculpt extra of something like this, and then maybe have some that I just throw away, then not have enough and have to re-get out the color and re-get out acrylic and all of that jazz. So now we get to start gluing all of these extra little pieces in place, and I'm going to just start at the top of my little monster and then work my way down. So I began with gluing those two little horns in place, and then I'm going to start grabbing some of those little triangle vertical scales and place them in place, each one by one. And when you're working on these, I always use like a little tweezers or something to pick them up and grab them, and so I would recommend doing that as far as just picking up the individual pieces. But otherwise, while you're working on the actual like head, make sure you hold it steady. Having that it has the neck little wiggliness, that little loop-de-loop going on the neck, it is really hard to hold these pieces. And I know I've said it before, like during the filing portion of this design, that make sure you're really holding on to it. And it's true. I don't know if it's just my hands. My hands are a little funky sometimes, but it might just be me. But it was so hard to hold on to this little guy because he just wanted to keep rotating. So just be cautious while you're working on this, and maybe use a second pair of tweezers or something to hold him in place if you're struggling like I was. But then I'm going to take some more of the same colors of acrylic. So I've got all of them lined up next to me. I've got the white, the green, and the purple that I've been using in this particular phase, and I'm going to add some thickness to the pieces as I'm sculpting them and working on them, as well as I just added my little monster eyes there. I'm going to add second beads of purple to each scale. That's going to kind of round them out and make them look a little bit less flat-sided, because whatever side was down on the nail form backing is going to have this really like super shiny, very, very flat appearance. So I like to add just a little bit more acrylic to kind of round them out, make them look a little bit less, I don't know, flat. So I've got the head pretty much done at this point. Then I'm going to move on to the body, and I'm going to glue the arms into place. So there's the first one, and then I'm going to be adding the second one. And you guys can see a really good view of those polka dots. I really love the way that those turned out, because I think they look a lot more natural than, if you just painted the polka dots on. I think they look a lot more just like they would if they were actual monster skin. I've never seen real life monster skin, but I imagine it looks something like that. So I've got those arms in place, and now I'm going to start gluing down the scales for the rest of, down the rest of the body. Once you get to like the tail area or the butt zone of your monster, then you're going to need to glue the tail in place. If you're making a tail. If you're not making a tail, then just don't worry about the butt zone of your monster. But if you do want to add a tail, don't forget to glue that in place. So I've got a little bit more acrylic I'm going to be adding to each arm to round them out. Just like I said before, same whole concept, same thing for the scales. Add a little bit more of the purple. And when you're doing this, it's really teeny tiny beads of acrylic, so it's easy to get carried away and end up with too much of a color for this particular process. And so if that's something that you're concerned with as far as getting too much acrylic and having too much on your brush, one thing that I like to do is I like to make sure I monitor how much monomer. I monitor the monomer that's on my brush. I should get that on a shirt. Monitor the monomer. That would be awesome. I would wear that. Anyways, so when you dip the brush, you're going to tap it off on the side of your dish. So this is what I was saying I should make an acrylic bead pickup video. So you're going to tap your brush on the side of your dish and just keep kind of track of it, because everybody's monomer is different. Everybody's, how deep you dip your brush is different. So just saying that what I do is I dip my brush halfway and I tap it 3 times and then I get the perfect beads every time isn't necessarily going to work for you. Different brands are different. So just monitor what you specifically are doing so that when you do get the perfect bead and you have an amazing acrylic ratio, you can know what you did, and then it can almost become like a mantra for you, and you can think to yourself, okay, dip the brush halfway, tap it 3 times. Even if, you only have to do that for a week, and then your acrylic ratio mixes are just down like the back of your hand, and you can, remember it for the rest of your life. Having that, getting it that in the beginning can really help as far as getting that acrylic ratio down. So I've got my legs on there. I've got the tail. I'm going to add those vertical scales all the way down the tail too. So like I said, I have a couple different sizes of vertical scales, and so having that available so that they can continue all the way down the tail without looking awkwardly large is really a nice little option to have. So I'm going to turn my little dinosaur back around and start grabbing more of those pesky scales. The other thing with making extra of those, like I said, I like to make some extra ones, is that if you drop them and they disappear underneath your table and then your cat swats them across the room and you lose it forever because it goes down the heating pipe, it's not a big deal because you have some extra ones. And I say that like I've experienced it. I'll let you guys guess if I've ever had situations like that before. So I've got the scales going all the way down the tail. Just a couple more. I think it's just, whatever fills in and looks comfortable. You don't have to overdo it. And then add that second layer of acrylic to all of those. The other thing that second layer helps with is, I don't know if you guys noticed when I was placing them, but they kind of look like they were staggered. And with the tweezers, it's just a little bit hard to get them in a perfectly straight line. So if you add acrylic and you know that one's a little further to the left, if you add some acrylic to the right, it'll even it out and make it look like it's centered. And it'll just kind of straighten all that out. So I'm going to fill in his mouth with a very thin layer of black acrylic. And then I also sculpted 4 little white triangles for teeth. And those are basically the same as the vertical scales as far as shape goes. And I'm going to glue those little teethies into his mouth. So I've got each one. I'm going to start in the middle and then go towards the outside edge so that they're centered. So there's the first 2. And I'm going to add the second 2. I just love the way his little mouth looks. He's got that big wide smile with those big teeth. And I'm going to actually glue the monster to the tip of the nail. So I'm going to fit the tip of the nail right into his mouth, hold that in place until the glue sets. And then if you want to, you can take a little bit of clear acrylic and kind of push it into the mouth to help hold that nail a bit more permanently. And now taking my e-file, I'm going to carve out the bite on the side of my monster, or the side of the nail where the monster already took a bite. So I've got a small round bit, and I'm going to just press it in to the nail. So I'm so sorry I'm covering up the video, but there you can see a nice classic little bite mark. So now going back, I'm going to start using acrylic paint on my monster. So this is, kind of just like I've been saying all along, really personalize your monster. Don't feel like you need to do just one specific style. Don't feel like you need to copy everything I did. Obviously, if you want to, no problem. But when you're going through to add all the little details, know that you can keep this as simple as you want, especially since we were using color acrylic. If you only wanted to give this guy pupils and say all the other details are done because I did it before, you can certainly do that and you don't have to worry about adding anything. If you want to go through and do a little bit more detailing like I did, you certainly can do that too. I added some stripes on the horns, just some black little lines going all the way spiraling up. But then most of what I did was highlighting the white bits on him. So teeth, eyes, and claws to make them a little bit more bright white. After I have that done, I went through with some black paint just to do a few outlines where I thought that they were necessary. So the little top of the teeth, just to make that line a bit more clean. And then a little bit of brown paint on the inside of the bite mark as a shadow. And so then after you have that, I'm going to move on to above the monster on the rest of the nail, and I'm going to write num num like he's just really enjoying it and he can't help but say num 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 as he's eating on this nail. So I've got the first N-O, and then I'm going to do M, and I'm going to do 2 fonts for this. I love switching it up and doing a couple different fonts in my little writing because I think it gives the nail just a little bit more interest instead of just a single font. And if you're ever looking for font inspiration, there's a couple places that I like to go. I like to look at Pixlr. So that's the photo editing software I use, which is a free online photo editing software. But they have some really pretty fonts, and you can just type something in and then you can see it all written out for you. Or you can just Google different kinds of fonts. Like I like to say Google cursive font or, you know, Old English fonts, and you'll get all sorts of different styles, and you'll get the full alphabet that you can use to work off of. Then apply a layer of gel sealer over that background. Make sure you get it all the way up to those teeth, all the way in, and then inside the little bite marks, and then some matte top coat over Mr. Monster. You're top coating the body. If you are doing, you know, and it's kind of loose like mine is or wiggly like mine is, same thing. It's kind of awkward to get him to sit still to be top coated, but it does work. And here is the final design. This design actually looks really cute from both the top view and the side view, just because of the writing on the nail, and then you can see his little face really well from the top view. So I love it so much. I hope you guys love it as much as I do, and don't forget to share recreations with me on Facebook or Instagram. This one is so cute, and I'd love to see your guys' various takes on what your cute monster would be, you know, different personality features, different scales or horns or 5 eyes or whatever you want to do. I'd love to see it. So don't forget to share recreations with me on Facebook or Instagram, and I will see you next time. Bye.